notice that very often the same people that are pro-abortion are also pro-euthanasia? These same people are also very often pro the transition of boys to girls and girls to boys, if this young boy really believes he's really a girl. Well, you could put all those under the banner of being pro-choice. That is what you could argue they have in common. To which I would ask, whose choice? Does the unborn baby have a choice? Does the elderly person who feels like a burden have a choice when they are sometimes pressured into assisted suicide? And do these young boys and girls really understand the gravity of the choice they are making as they receive operations that permanently sterilize them? The fact that Tavistock Clinic is facing over 1,000 lawsuits alone from ex-clients would suggest otherwise. Among these certain views of the world, I would submit runs another common thread, a thread that in my opinion better describes what these views have in common. These are not pro-choice stances as much as they are anti-life positions. The ending of human life before it is born, the sterilization of young teens so that they can never have children of their own, and then the ending of life prematurely through assisted suicide. The issues I have mentioned are the most significant life or death issues as you could refer to them. But what about the stances that many with these views have on a more innocent social level? Well, you'll very quickly come across ideas such as the notion of toxic masculinity, the idea that there is something fundamentally destructive or oppressive about being masculine, rather than the drive of men being celebrated for what it has accomplished and the safety that it brings to society. Instead, it is blamed for all of humanity's woes. Where have we seen this recently?
I am a prevention violence minister, and I know who causes violence in the world. It is white cis men. That is white cis men.
This message of how toxic and destructive masculinity is has been around and growing for some time. Undoubtedly, this messaging is having an extremely negative impact, especially on young men and boys. The worldwide phenomenon that is Avatar 2 was not so long ago in the theatres, and this is what the film's director James Cameron had to say about testosterone and its effects on young boys. We are fearful of masculinity, and so we demand that boys essentially act like girls, and sometimes we literally try to turn them into girls. It would seem that testosterone is a harmful and evil toxin, unless, of course, we are injecting it into young girls who think they are boys, in which case it's entirely necessary and the right thing to do. Even though in the process it removes their ability of one day having children of their own. I'm hoping you are now seeing how the dots of all these positions can be connected with a common thread, and that thread is being anti-life. This is why I submit to you that anti-life is the correct label here, not pro-choice, because what happens when these two priorities overlap? Are these same groups still passionate about your choice? This brings me to the issue today, that although on the surface it seems more subtle, it is still very much anti-life, and ironically is also anti-choice. And that is when it comes to the issue of saving the planet from imminent climate destruction. The messaging we receive on this topic being anti-choice is probably rather obvious to you, because we're told what we should and shouldn't eat, what car we should drive, even how we should heat or not heat our homes. But where this topic becomes anti-life is when it crosses the line by telling young people that they should not aspire to having a family, that the most loving thing you can do for this planet is avoid having children. Here's a few examples of these sentiments taking effect in the lives of young women.
It started off just being, oh, I just don't want to have children, and then I became aware that actually the best thing I can do for the environment is not to have any children. Now I would call myself an environmentalist, and I try and live in a way that is as sustainable as possible. So that's things like cycling everywhere, and I'm a vegan. I don't shower every day. I don't wash my hair every day. In fact, I only wash my hair about once a month. Can you tell? It's inescapable that having kids in the first place creates a resource-consuming person. That's not me trying to sound like no one should have kids, but it's kind of a fact. If I fell pregnant, I would have an abortion.
Last year I really became very aware of what's happening with our ecological collapse of the natural environment, and I was so concerned about that. It was actually quite bad timing because I'd just come to the point with my partner where we were discussing having a family.
Right.
And so I became very aware of what's happening with the environment and how that could affect our future.
So, Alice, let's come to you then, because you were relieved to find a group of people that felt the same way as you. But this choice is to have an impact globally, but what it does immediately is have an impact on you and your life choice and your lifestyle and those around you. I mean, you've got a partner.
Yeah.
Is this something you've discussed together?
Yeah, we have. I mean, it's so hard because making a decision like this, it goes against everything you set out for in life, you know. Even myself and my own career, I wanted to be an environmental scientist. I don't even feel like I have time to do that because it's such a crisis. You know, I just need to be straight campaigning now. And with having a family as well, that's what most of us want, right? And, you know, me and my partner, I'm 25, he's just about to turn 30. We've got our own flat, you know, this is the time of life. And even last night when we headed out and we just passed some gorgeous children on the street, you know, these twins in their buggy, their dad was pushing them and we were waving to them. And that was actually when my heart sort of broke last night. Once you have yourself, you know, for my partner and my family really understood the crisis that has brought us to this decision, they can almost see it as a no-brainer.
Every young person should be free to decide how they want their life to play out and should be free to change their minds as they grow and mature. But telling compassionate young women that the morally virtuous thing to do is deny their natural desire to be a mother one day and to instead campaign against climate change is putting guilt on women that is robbing them of the joy of having a family of their own. That to mother children is selfish and destructive to the planet. And likewise, young men shouldn't be told that their testosterone is a poison and their drive to compete and achieve is toxic and that it should be squashed down. That they are the cause of all the violence in the world and the destruction of the planet for that matter. This kind of message leaves young men demoralized and apathetic, angry and truly destructive. It's the very last message we need to be forcing on young men as they try to find their identity and purpose in the world. Before we look at the truth of the situation and how the birth rates are plummeting to unsustainable levels and that the governments around the world actually desire to see an increase in birth rates, we are going to take a look at Professor Jordan Peterson's response to a lecturer teaching a room full of young people some of these demoralizing and anti-life ideas.
Incoming freshmen next year, University of Toronto, Stanford University, 18-year-old kids coming into this. We've been through 3 years of COVID. I won't rehearse it all. One sentence, what would you say to them as they begin university at the age of 18 or 19? What's the restorative, the redemptive sentence? What should they do?
Don't be thinking your ambition is corrupt. You know, because that's part of the message now. Human beings, we're a cancer on the planet. We're headed for an environmental apocalypse. The entire historical structure is nothing but atrocity, etc., etc. Anyone with any ethical aim whatsoever is just going to pull back. You don't want to manifest any ambition, support the patriarchal structure, exploit the environment. You've got to crush yourself down. You shouldn't even have any children. It's like, no. There's no excuse for that. There's zero excuse for that. I saw a professor at an event, something like this. He came out and trumpeted this bloody, environmentally friendly house he'd built. And, you know, fair enough, man. It was a pretty interesting house, but not everybody had the $4 million that it took him to build it. And I'm not criticizing his money even. It's like, he's had some money, good for him. He built a house, okay. But then to trumpet that as a moral virtue, well, you're pushing it there. And then he came out to all the kids and he said, you know, my wife and I decided that we were only going to have one child. And I think that's one of the most ethical things we could have possibly done. And I would strongly encourage you to do the same. I thought, you son of a bitch. You get up in front of these young people. A lot of these kids were children of first-generation immigrants from China. And he showed all these images, you know, of these terrible factories in China, these endless rows of sterile mechanism that were subordinating all the Chinese people to this terrible, you know, capitalist machine. And I thought, you don't understand, half the audience is looking at those factories and thinking, that's a hell of a lot better than struggling through the mud under Mao, buddy. And so, I don't know where he thought he was, but to come out in front of all those kids and basically tell them that the whole human enterprise is so goddamn corrupt that the best thing they could possibly do is limit their multiplication, and to think of himself as a scholar and an educator, it was just, I did say something, by the way. It was rather uncomfortable, and he stomped off the stage. But that's no message for young people. There's no excuse for that. And you think, well, you know, we're going to destroy the planet. We have to do this. We have to demoralize the youth to be ethical. It's like, yeah, really, that's your theory? You're going to demoralize young people to be ethical? That's your theory? It's like, you should go home and think about that for like a year. And I'm passionate about this, you know, because you have no idea how many people that's killing. You have no idea. I see people everywhere, all over the world. They're so demoralized, especially young people with a conscience, because they've been told since they were little that there's nothing to them but corruption and power. It's like, how the hell do you expect them to react? You know, well, I shouldn't do anything then, you know.
Dr. Jordan Peterson on what was the phrase? The divine sovereign
individual.
The divine sovereign individual. Thank you.
Not only are these anti-life, self-destructive ideas being rammed down the throats of young people, the claims that are being made in order to do so aren't even true. The math actually shows we are heading for a population collapse, where there aren't enough young people being born to support an aging society, and just not enough babies being born in general, causing governments of the world to strategize ways to increase the population. All the while, these genocidal ideas are being branded into the minds of young people in universities all over the world. But now, here's the truth. In the last 50 years, the global fertility rate has halved. According to the World Health Organization, we need to average 2.1 children per woman today just to replace the previous generation. And what happens if the number dips below 2.1? The domino effect as the current population ages and lives longer will be a shrinking younger population, leading to labour shortages and society imbalances in the world's biggest economies. This is set to happen in the United States, China, Japan and Germany. And here in New Zealand, we are no different, with a repopulation rate in 2022 of 1.6. And of course, there are many reasons why children and families are important that go beyond the economic and practical survival of society. Not least of which because being a parent is the honour and responsibility of carrying the next generation on your shoulders, and by doing so in a loving, safe family bestows an immeasurable gift to the child and then to society. And so raising children should be encouraged in young men and women alike. Young women shouldn't be made to feel like choosing to raise children is somehow second best, or even worse, that it is selfish and destroying the planet. And young men should be encouraged to strive with every bit of ambition and testosterone they can muster. And what better way to do that than fathering, protecting and providing for a family? These are the messages we should be teaching young men and women. Messages that are encouraging, truthful and inspiring. Messages that lead to life.